while Dr. Hamilton is getting ready, maybe we could do a big wave of greetings from across Africa. So people in the house from Cameroon, wave, do a check finger, something. Is there anybody from Cameroon? I don't see any from Cameroon just yet. Brazil. I see 2 from Brazil. Hi, Brazil. Nigeria. Hopefully I have full screen because I might be missing some people on the other screens. Well, let's go with Kenya. I see a lot of Kenya in the house. Hi, Uganda. Cyrus, is that Uganda? Wonderful, wonderful. Who am I missing, Jen? Not United States. I'm not missing you. Don't worry. I haven't forgotten. So United States.
Folks here from Burkina Faso.
Oh yeah, Burkina Faso. Vous êtes là?
Yes, I'm here.
Awesome. Yaya, hi.
Hi.
And I know we have someone from Senegal.
Oui, nous sommes là.
Aha, merci, bienvenue.
Merci.
Rwanda in the house.
I'm there.
Yes.
All right.
Anyway, amakuru.
Hello.
Ni makuru ni meza.
Ni meza cyane. Murakaza neza.
Murakoze cyane.
We had a few people from Spain and Dr. Hamilton, are you ready?
I am ready, but I think that I need to have your screen sharing.
Aha. Jen, can you?
Oh, I have your PowerPoint on, Dr. Hamilton. If you just want to tell me the next slide, I can do it for you.
Well,
he likes to be.
Is there anything that you can't do? All right, sure. Let's go ahead and my display's up. Oh, but that was such a great opening card. If you go back, so I appreciate the chance that Ruth took to greet people from different countries. I've been watching Ruth and Jennifer plan this forum and its different events since this past early summer, and I'm glad to talk. I'm going to talk for, I hope, 10 or 15 minutes. I want to give you some ideas for breakout groups. On slide 2, Jennifer, I refer to this as undercard. We have I guess, can you have an education, a celebrity speaker? We do in Saul Khan. He'll be coming a little bit later in the webinar. And Ruth asked me to serve in sort of an undercard role before he comes in and to share some ideas from world of funding and some of the work that I've done in UNESCO that may be relevant or germane to this conversation. So in this conversation, I will talk for a bit, but I want you to do something that we don't, as teachers, ask our students to do, and that's to think about something else. So I'll talk, you can listen, but I also want you to think about some things that you can share in breakout groups. I will talk about a main idea, namely, what has the pandemic done for you that could not have been done otherwise? But then also I want to share a little bit about what's called the global learning crisis, the role of UNESCO and other agencies that are either NGOs or government agencies and how they're positioned in the global learning crisis as it relates to Sub-Sahara, and talk briefly about curriculum paradigms. Slide 3. So we have limited time, and yet I'm going to ask you to walk with me through my son's wedding last month. Why would a wedding be relevant? Just a few pictures. We're in California. Kansas is in the middle of the country. My son and his fiance were planning a a traditional big family wedding with maybe 200 or 300 people. The pandemic prevented that. And what we wound up, yes, thank you. Congratulations, indeed. I happily accept those, especially for him. But I got married also. No, of course I'm married, but everyone in our family got married to everyone in their family. We wound up having a 1 week set of activities, essentially a 1 week wedding, where 10 people in 2 different families spent the week together. We all got COVID tests beforehand, so we were all mask free. We went to the middle of Kansas. You see in the upper right picture a waterbed, and we were in a wetlands, and they had a ceremony there. The reason I'm saying this is that we wound up having an experience we could never have had out of the pandemic. And it was because of the pandemic. So I want to ask you, no, we don't want the pandemic, but if you can, in a breakout group, be ready to say some things that may be even poignantly positive about your experience as an educator and in prompting and promoting learning that you could never have done outside of the pandemic setting. So we'll share that in breakout groups. And these are all things that you can be writing notes down, and if you get more interested in writing those notes down than anything else I have to say, that's great. I want to ask you to be sharing here. All right, so we'll do that in breakout groups. Next slide. So within that, here a couple of other questions. The first one is related, and then 2 more. Pandemic shifts in African education and education more generally that you think will outlast the pandemic. This is not an uncommon theme. We hear people talk about returning to the way things were, and there's a general wisdom, a conventional wisdom, that things will never be the way that they were. As educators, let's get specific. What are some things that are in your world as an educator or as a leader that you know will never be the same and that will be to the better? That's the first of this set of questions. Another is a formal continuation of conversation that we've had in the prior webinars and prior forums, and that's to think about resources you can provide others and resources that others can meet. We are in the process of reimagining and rethinking the way we will address learning, because we haven't been doing it that well. And I'm not saying that to condemn any of us, we're all educators together, but as we imagine and recreate and re-engineer a future for education, what do we have and what do we need that we can share? So you're writing ideas down. These are things that you're going to be putting into the breakout group conversation. And keep going, Jennifer, if you can. I mentioned we haven't done education well. And I want to share with you a couple of pictures that I took, actually that a student of mine took when we were together in Uganda. They were incredibly depressing to me, in part because they depicted activity that I knew did not have much going on. There's a great quotation that came out, actually now it's a few years old, I think 2015. 90% of the children in the developing world, and I prefer to say low-income world, are now enrolled in school. For those of you that were around at the turn of the century, there was monumental success in getting kids into school. There are many more kids in school worldwide than there were. A testament to efforts of governments, donors, and nonprofits. But 240 million of these children, despite the fact that they're enrolled, are learning almost nothing. That is the experience that I've had in looking at what happens when you have large classrooms with teachers who have been provided insufficient training in contexts that are resource deficient and conceptually deficient with respect to how to teach. And I think we're all conceptually deficient with respect to teaching and learning. We're still learning. So at UNESCO and other places, we refer to this as a global learning crisis, where people are in school but not learning. Next slide then, Jennifer. So even before the pandemic, we're in a situation where kids are going to school and there's not a lot of learning. There's a bullet point, we don't know the cost of pandemic, but before the pandemic, 2/3 of the kids who can't read are already in school. So there's this contravention of what we would expect, that in school you have kids who are able to read proficiently, but most of the kids who can't are actually in school. World Economic Forum, only half of the world's children can be expected. My experience with this, as Ruth said, is in Sub-Sahara. And this just represents every day, especially during the pandemic, a huge hemorrhage of human capital and tragic loss. Most of you are familiar with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Those are 17 development goals to help produce a sustainable, prosperous, and a more fair global society. The fourth goal represents or addresses quality and equity. The UN made a large effort at the turn of the century to get more kids in school. 10 or 15 years ago, as I was developing the Sustainable Development Goals, I realized this picture where kids are sitting in class and there's not much going on. Of the different parts of UNESCO, which is a huge entity, there are 7 institutes within education. I worked at the one that's dedicated to actual teaching and learning. So that's called the International Bureau of Education. UNESCO picked it up from Jean Piaget. He was an educator that many or most of you are familiar with, and it became a part of UNESCO in 1969. Its motto, or its mission, is to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education. Ruth asked me to mention this briefly because UNESCO is a large elephant in the room of trying to engineer and develop a better educational future. A few more comments about it. Go ahead, Jennifer. And then to discuss it more fully in the context of government organizations, government ministries, and NGOs. It was exciting to be, I had a 1-year appointment. It was exciting to be within the walls of UNESCO and to be working with member states around the world, especially within Sub-Sahara. Most of my Sub-Sahara work came as a professor at Pepperdine, but I did some work in with a number of countries, Eswatini and Rwanda for the most largely, most prominently. Those organizations, the ones that Zach Mbasso is here, I think some others from the organization called ITEMS or Africa Mathematics Initiative, they all provide moral and intellectual leadership. So to the degree that we can tie in with any of those, I strongly encourage that, and UNESCO provides enormous intellectual leadership. The example I give is their focus on competence-based curriculum. For those of you who are interested in competence-based curriculum, I don't want to maybe take time during our Future of Africa, of Education in Africa forums, but I'm happy to talk more about those with you. And they provide a lot of catalytic energy. Countries organize large initiatives when an entity like UNESCO or a large country funding comes in. But this is one thing that maybe didn't come across so much in our last forum on funding. They don't provide money usually. And be aware that when you're looking for resources, you may be competing with a company or an entity like UNESCO. They're usually chasing money as much as you are. If you can get them to work with you or you can work with them, that's great. And then you can go to donors for support. Generally, a place like UNESCO will not give money. They want you and they need you to get money from large donors. But make sure it's a partnership that's on your terms. So there are a lot of different funding sources, but be aware in this landscape that entities that may appear as sources really are also seeking resources. Okay, next, Jennifer, I think we're coming close to. So this is an undercard for Khan Academy. I have a ton of interests. I've been using Khan Academy for over a decade. Sometimes when I'm teaching a calculus class or a statistics class, I'll look up video on Khan Academy. And of course, it's become very popular because for many reasons, but one of which is the easygoing and clear style of the videos. For our purposes, I want to share with you my special interest, and that is to make the enormous resources of Khan Academy, which has effectively the full curriculum in some way or another of virtually any country, but organized as separate videos, to see how those can be adapted in countries that are resource deficient because of the multitude of dialects and languages. I'm very interested, those of you who have worked with me know I'm very interested in having video versions of curriculum that appear in multiple languages. Not a video that you can see in different languages, but the same video that might have dubbing or captioning in multiple languages. So that's a topic I'm interested in as we get into the presentation with Mr. Khan. But in the meantime, Jennifer, I'll turn it back to you. If you can recap the questions, and I hope that we can have a chance to ruminate and reflect with one another on things that have been working, success stories, and ways the pandemic has made us better as educators. Ruth, thank you very much. Appreciated the chance to share with you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hamilton. I greatly appreciate this. Every time you drop your wisdom with us, we always appreciate it. So thank you again for doing this. Before we move into the breakout rooms, we want to share, because one of our goals here is to bring together partnerships to help with the problems that we're facing, sharing resources together and all of that. So last time, our first meeting, those of you that were part of our first meeting know that we had teachers training together speak and share with us a little bit about what they do. Today, we have the founder of Teacher Training Teachers in the house, and it's quite exciting because she has some announcement to make to us as a group that I believe is in line with what we are all working towards as a network right now. So do we have Beth in the house? Beth, are you here?
Yep, I am.
Hi, will you just introduce yourself a little bit again and then share with us this great news that you have? We're very excited and welcome.
Sure, thank you. If you were at one of the first forums in June, you met Ali White, who is a colleague of ours who works in Liberia. We are 10 years old as an organization, primarily in Haiti. And if you can do it in Haiti, you can do it anywhere, they say. So we wondered if we would ever be in Africa or somewhere else. And a pathway was open to meet Ali. And it just was an awesome chemistry, an awesome opportunity to get together with her. And she launched TTT in Liberia almost a year and a half ago. She's on her second year of running our program there. And I want to couple with the comments that Dr. Hamilton said about opportunities during COVID, because that pathway opened up another pathway into Uganda, where TTT is launching this fall, only because of COVID, which is an awesome story. And now TTT seems to be spreading its wings in Africa even more, because we have developed a scholarship program where interested partners can apply to have some support funding to launch TTT in their country. And I guess my really big announcement which still feels like I'm joking with you, but it's actually going to happen, is next week we're announcing 7 new scholarship partners, 3 in Nigeria, 2 in Ghana, 1 in Cameroon, and 1 on the Ivory Coast. We are a French and English product, and so our Ivory Coast partner will be the first product in Africa that is trained in English, but presents their product in French. So we're really beside ourselves, to be honest with you. And so as a commercial on this little forum, I'd love to say that we know Haiti. We know Haiti very well, and more importantly, we know our product. But if you have, if this is piquing your interest at all in, I'm looking to form an Africa advisory board as we navigate Africa, because we do not want to assume that we know what we're doing here on this awesome, large continent. So thank you, though, so much for the chance to, thanks for welcoming Ollie that day, and thanks for letting me and my colleagues on today. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, Beth. This is why we are here. You're a perfect example of why we would like to keep doing these forums and why we want to be able to partner with other people that are already doing some work in order to reach the huge amount of children that we have in sub-Saharan Africa. Thank you again for the work that you do from the bottom of my heart, and as a lover of education in sub-Saharan Africa. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'm sure everybody thanks you for your effort in engaging us in the conversation and letting us be a part of our own, solving our own problems. Thank you.
Thanks, my pleasure.
Jennifer, will you take it over with the breakout rooms, please?
Yes. So again, thank you, Dr. Hamilton, and thank you, Beth, for just sharing again these resources that are available. And we are going to take some time. So Mr. Khan will be joining us on the hour. And so for the next 15 minutes, what we would like to do is to break you into groups, and that will take just a moment to organize, because what we have found in the last couple of forums is there's so much learning that takes place with one another and from one another. And so I apologize, the wrong thing is on the slide here, but if you can take the questions that Dr. Hamilton had talked about. I'll put them into the chat in just a moment. But the primary one is, what learning have you seen facilitated that's only been possible because of the pandemic? So, and you may have already jotted down some notes on that. So that's the primary question. We'll include some other ones. What I'm going to ask you to do in your group is just to ask one person from your group to serve as a note taker, and to think of one takeaway from your conversations, that when we come back, we will take a few moments to have just each group share one takeaway from your conversation. So again, the primary question is, what learning have you seen or facilitated that's been only possible because of the pandemic? And then we'll include some sub-questions as well. So at this point in time, I'm going to stop my share. And Ruth, are you going to be placing people into someone who's placing them into breakouts?
I think I'm gonna work on that.
Okay.
Yes, I try to.
What?
I think you are already doing it for us. Can you proceed, please?
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So I think what Ruth has asked us to do is, we're supposed to be answering the question. We can do basically un tour de table, like just go around and kind of say what learning was possible because of the pandemic. So there we go. And also, yeah, what learning is possible because of the pandemic, pandemic shifts. So maybe we can start with the first question. So what learning have you seen or facilitated that is only possible because of the pandemic? Does anyone want to go first?
You can do it, guys. You can do it.
Thank you, Ruth. And I think in Kenya, we have been especially when we pick school education system because
able to all students of our school.
Ah, okay.
We had 20 unities. We had 20 unities of schools in Brazil, and
oh, Ruth just joined us.
Hi, you guys have a problem with the questions?
We were just taking some time to introduce ourselves before we jumped into the questions.
Okay, that's wonderful. I'm just going around dropping questions just in case you didn't have it.
Perfect.
You can proceed. I'm gonna just stay for a minute and then leave.
Perfect. Well, Matthew, if you can hear us and you want to unmute yourself, feel free to interrupt at any point and introduce yourself. But maybe we can start on some of the questions. Patrick or Focus, would you like to start to share some things that you've learned since the pandemic has happened? Any learning that has been specific to some of the challenges that have come up?
Yes, I could go. Yeah, I could go first. In terms of what learning have I learned during this pandemic? So going back to when the pandemic began, most of the schools in the country, especially here in Kenya, were closed, and so learning shifted virtually, especially in schools or in households that could be able to afford to maybe purchase internet or even have gadgets which students could be able to use. So when I look at that and what has happened,
same probably people have the degree to adapt. People's adaptability has really been extraordinary. In ordinary times, people would say, oh, I can't do this, I don't have internet connection, I don't even have a phone. But with the pandemic, people are kind of trying hard to see all of this happen. So people are adapting very seriously. And the fact that people can adapt to new situations is going to only the pandemic would only increase people's ability to adapt. This is something I think we should mention.
Yeah, that's true, really. So okay, so I didn't get her name. Yeah, like I want to get the right pronunciation of your name. The lady who's taking our notes.
Chromebooks so that they're able to use them during this, COVID scenario. And okay, 70%, but you can think of it as 40% of those 70%, they have virtually no computer in their home. And they have no internet service. So the district provides a hotspot that the district is actually paying with, through AT&T. So you look at that. So when you've spoken about what Microsoft and the local, companies, communication companies out maybe somewhere in Africa, some remote place, but it's happening in my little village here in the Inland Empire. I'm calling it that. I mean, so, and it's for me, I'll be honest with you, I'm from Kenya. I'm an immigrant. I've been here for close to 25 years. And I'm seeing what I saw in my village back home, though my village had no paved roads, but I'm seeing more or less the same. Though we didn't have a car, here these families may have a utility car that they run up and down, but they're missing so many other things that they actually need to be able to survive. So it's globally, sometimes I say, across the world, we all face the same things. It's just that the local ones here where I am, they're not being said, so to say. It's like they're hidden. Nobody wants to say, you know, there's this need, but it is actually there. And nobody's doing much about it unless you pay for it. And that's what I'm saying.
I agree. I'm learning also that you have to think outside the box because you're dependent on technology. And I was without technology for a week and a half, and I had to teach. And I was thinking like, okay, you were talking about hotspots, so I called the district. They weren't giving hotspots. They were out of hotspots, and so I had to basically wind up using my cell phone and trying to figure out how to navigate with my cell phone and teaching. And it was really difficult to do that because, you know, the screen is little, and then the cell phone is different from your computer, your laptop. Even the iPad is different in order to find different, you know, little buttons and things and know how to use them. So it's teaching you how to be creative and to get back to it.
Yeah.
All right, Ruth, do we have everyone?
Yes, we do.
All right. Well, welcome back. We hope that was a meaningful time for you. And we have about probably 8 minutes until Mr. Khan will be joining us. And we wanted to have this time be where you can just share a takeaway from your group. So we hope you know which group number you were in, but if there is, Ruth, how many groups did we end up with?
7 or 8.
Okay. So if we can have someone from group 1 who would like to share one takeaway, again, try and keep it to 1 minute. We have someone from group 1.
Jen, I don't know what group we were at all, but
All right.
I took notes for our group, so want to just jump in?
Sure, thank you, Beth.
Okay. We had a couple from Brazil, I believe, share about how they're able to put science experiments, how to do physics and chemistry experiments. I believe it was as early as the age of 7. And they put out their videos through WhatsApp and YouTube. And in our breakout room, they even shared one through a chat. So we all have a little sneak peek and access to their experiments. Another person in our group, a student from Kenya, shared about how typically students don't have phones and access to maybe phones till they're 18, but because everything's online, they've had to all get phones and use that. And so she's seeing a lot of digital literacy because students are now required to have phones. And another gentleman shared a perspective as a parent. We're all home with our kids doing education in a sense. And so what a privilege it is to see his own kids learning from home. And it reminded him that education starts at home, which is then bringing awareness to the parents of his students to say that education starts at home. And I think he and I both agree that we all have something in common. We're all a bunch of humans on this planet using technology, all of us. He also commented that he's able to teach his students email etiquette, not hey, how you doing, but good morning, how to form the body of an email. And even preparing students to use things such as Google Meets and Canvas in prep for universities someday, maybe. And then I just gave a shout out about TTT, about how Google Ads is the little story behind TTT on why we found ourselves in Africa, because it's a different way of utilizing technology to make your product or make your resources known. Just like the science experiments, though. That's exactly the same thing.
Great, thank you. Do we have another group that would like to share? I'm jotting down some of these ideas. I hope you are as well.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Muchechi Aquiles. I was in group 5 with, and all of us, actually, the 4 of us, we are all just here in the US. So our perspective was within. Now, one thing that we were able to speak of is through this pandemic and what's going on, that we've seen that both teachers and our students, they've really had to come up with completely new learning, of doing things. And through that, both our students and our teachers have discovered, good and better ways of engaging with each other. And this is one thing that we're able to see, that it is most likely going to translate back to the classroom when we get back to the physical classroom, because we know that sometimes teachers, especially our veteran teachers, are hung in their old ways of not wanting to even touch technology. But through this, they've learned so much, they're learning so many new things that they're likely going to translate back to the classroom when they get back. And one thing that that came up was really what some of the utility companies, especially in the not so well off countries, that they're doing together with big corporations from the US or across the globe, that they're doing to provide services, and especially hardware, whether it is Chromebooks to students in poor countries, so to say, if I may use that. And just as the first group has just shared that, being able to access even a phone that has internet is everything. So yeah, through this pandemic, we believe that there's been new discoveries on how to engage with each other, and new learning has really been evolving every day.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mitati. We have another group that would like to share.
I can go. So I was in group 4, and one of the things that we talked about and how the pandemic has changed education, I think a huge part is adaptability, and how a lot of educators and students, they're adapting to the new way of doing things. And someone in our group shared how they've been using technology, specifically cell phones, to connect with the students, to answer questions, and to reach out to parents and just connect with them, to provide that information and to provide the necessary content that they need. And it's definitely helping improving the children's reading and comprehension. And in order for that to continue, she did mention the government taking ownership and investing in infrastructure and technology. And also one other individual talked about another important resource that will be helpful is just the opportunity to share best practices among educators to see what's working in various parts of sub-Saharan Africa and how it can be adapted in other parts to improve the education atmosphere.
Thank you so much. Can you share what your name, please?
It's Aganemano, but I go by Mano.
Aganemano. Okay, thank you so much.
He's one of our superstar graduate students at Pepperdine.
Wonderful.
And represents the most populous country of Africa, otherwise known as Nigeria.
I know. Thank you. I think we have time for one, maybe two more groups.
I was, my name is Focus from
Hello.
Rwanda. How are you?
I'm fine.
Yeah, in our group 3, we just mentioned the fact that when the pandemic broke out, there has been a great effort by governments, by different institutions and schools, private and public institutions, to make sure that learning continues using different mediums, including TV, radio, WhatsApp, Google Classroom. But it seems to me that Zoom is like the most developed technology for online learning. However, we realize that it requires that when you are using it, especially as a facilitator, you need at least 2 more people. One who deals with these small groups, Oh, you're back?
We're listening. I just stopped my screen share. You're fine. Keep talking.
Okay. At least one who deals with the technology part, putting people into small groups, discussions, but another one who encourages those who easily drop because of internet, the instability of internet. When the internet is unstable, people tend to just drop out. So there is a need of someone following up to encourage the learners to continue. That's what I just want to mention.
Thank you. And I know in Rwanda, I was just there 2 weeks ago, seeing you in person, Focus, and there's a huge push by the government to build classrooms so that the class sizes, when they do return, are not, that they're healthier. So less students in classes.
Exactly.
Let's see. Ruth, do we have time for one more question, or is Mr.
Our guest is not here yet, so guess we do have time.
Okay. Okay, would another group like to share?
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
My name is Cyrus from Kenya, a school called M-Pesa Foundation Academy. And in our group, we were able to share a range of issues that during the pandemic, most of us were able to adapt in various institutions we are in. And we discussed that as educators, we should be able to adapt to new digital approaches to learning. And I was happy to learn that most of our group members were able to use various gadgets in connecting with the learners. And there is need to strengthen learning management systems, which can adapt even through offline approach, so that the issue of internet being quite weak in some areas can be used to bridge that gap. And we also looked at issues to do with most teachers were working remotely, and I'm happy that in our school, yes, we are able to connect with learners, each and every learner through the phone, and we can now attest even through the learning management system, the learners were able to respond to assignments, and that kept us or kept the learners on toes during the pandemic, and that is a good sign. But generally, most parts of the country in Kenya were affected because most schools are public, and they depend on one-on-one approach to learning. Although some schools were using Zoom to meet learners, but not quite often. So it's also another area we need to look at, how schools need to adapt to various ways to reach learners in the future, so that we don't experience the loss of time as we have experienced during this time. So that was mostly what we discussed. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have a couple groups left who haven't shared yet.
I'm Toby from Pepperdine University, and I was in a group with a couple of people, and we basically touched on the differences between teaching before COVID and online learning and afterward, and some of the differences and some of the strengths and some of the needs, and then just teacher pedagogy and how that has gone on in Africa, and then also so we touched that. So if any of the other leaders in the group would like to join in, please go ahead. So, and I think we were group 8. I don't remember. So
we were group 8.
Do we have one more group? We are trying to track down our main guest.
So, hello everyone. My name is Mike Mumbo from Kenya. One thing that really stood out from our group was this opportunity that COVID opened avenues for to sensitize us to really strengthen online facilitation. The need to train teachers to embrace digital facilitation, because most institutions were unable to promote remote learning, the ability to even facilitate learning online or remotely, where we had a situation where both higher learning institutions and students at the kindergarten are all closing because there is no clear way of digital facilitation. So what really stood out from our group was the ability to promote and capacity build both staff and maybe lecturers at the higher institutions, as well as teachers for both primary and secondary schools to facilitate online learning. And most people that participate in our group, I think, are involved in both capacity building or training teachers for, especially on online, how do we do online facilitation or online learning. So maybe if I forget something, my other group members like Ugugwa can maybe say something.
Okay, hello everyone. Just like Michael has said, just to add to what he said, we're also talking about the cost of the internet, the cost of getting gigabytes. I remember Michael saying something about a teacher training program that was going on, and then it was online, and then you needed to buy data, $75 for 1 gig, which was too high for the teachers. They couldn't afford that, and that's why they couldn't participate online for that training. They preferred the physical learning because of the cost. So we also acknowledge cost as a hindrance to online learning. Then I also contributed and said, one, people don't have the devices, accessibility to devices, like to get devices that have internet connections, and that was why online learning couldn't take place. So I was also sharing with them that I'm currently doing my postgraduate meditation, and since March of the COVID, learning has been taking place online, and I don't know why. There's internet and there's a phone for our lecturers. Nobody wants to go online. So maybe one, the cost, two, the availability of the devices. So I think that was basically what we covered. And I also want to thank, because this COVID also opened up to a whole of online applications and trainings that teachers can do to develop their skills in order to be better practitioners in the field. Thank you.
Thank you. If everyone could just hang in there 1 second, Mr. Khan has been trying to get on, and for some reason it's not been working. So just if Ruth and I just need to focus on that for 1 moment. Ruth, can you just double check the waiting room? Because I know he's trying. He says he needs to sign in if he's the meeting host, Ruth. I'm not sure what that is.
Yeah, he doesn't need to sign in because he's not, it says if he's the host. So since he's not the host, you can just go ahead and sign in and make sure he has the passcode properly.
Yeah, if he's seeing that message, it's probably a different link, because that message only appears if if a meeting hasn't been activated. But clearly we are here. Hello everyone. But so nice to hear everybody speaking. I just wanted to mention, because I was in the group with Mike and Nahuba, is about just the cost of being something very challenging, but also trying to find ways to see what are the opportunities that we have. And I know on my end, as I was mostly listening, and Kim, I know you were in this group too, if you wanted to chime in. But what I'm very impressed by with everyone's conversations so far is everyone's perspective to want to make things better and see what we can do in this situation. So I want to also applaud everyone who is looking to try to find ways to make things better. So and the care that everyone has. So it's another positive thing that I guess, kind of seen, and I want to applaud for educators, is the willingness to kind of want to continue on and to not give up. I know it's kind of broad, but I just don't want to undermine that.
While Jennifer's working on that, I'd be happy to add a few more details from our group. Our group talked mainly about if you can't meet physically, then you can meet virtually. But we did have a member share that when there are children that are in a neighborhood or in an area together, that they were able to gather and to hire a separate teacher just to work with a small group of students. And so I think so much push is virtual and online, but there may be some opportunities to do breakout groups like we did in today's Zoom call, but do them physically in smaller groups and be able to still maintain a safe environment for those students. So I thought that was a unique approach to the situation as well.
All right, thank you, everyone. I do believe that we have Mr. Khan in the room.
Hello. We figured out the Zoom.
I told him there's nothing like having a forum around technology and education and having a technological issue.
No problem.
So, you are most welcome. I'm going to allow my colleague Ruth to introduce you properly, and welcome to our forum.
Good to be here.
Welcome, Mr. Khan, and thank you so much for giving us your time. I'm going to have a geek moment, not a geek moment, but a celebrity moment. I usually don't get excited over people, but I think I'm really excited over you today because I have a Khan Academy is one of the things that gave me peace throughout my undergraduate, because when I started undergraduate, I was so scared of math. I did not want to go to college because of math. So one of the first things I was introduced to was Khan Academy. So I'm really excited to have you. We are really excited to have you. So everybody, Mr. Khan is the founder of Khan Academy, and this is a free online platform that offers practice exercises, instructional videos, and a personalized learning dashboard that empowers learners to study at their own pace and in and outside of the classroom, which I am a really great example of. Mr. Khan used to be a hedge fund analyst, and he started doing these videos as tutorials for his cousin, and now see how big it is and how it's helped so many people in over 190 countries, and it has over 42 million users. So Mr. Khan, thank you so much for giving us your time. Thank you so much for having the heart to help, and thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
No, thanks for having me. Thanks for your kind words. I got disappointed when you said celebrity moment. I got excited. Who's here?
You're here. Oh. So, Mr. Khan, we'll just pass the baton to you, since we've had you, technology have had us running a little bit late. We'll pass the baton to you. Do you need screen share, or are you?
Oh, no, this should be fine. No, what I can do is, one of the things that I've been preaching a lot lately is, and I was preaching this even pre-COVID, but especially with COVID, is if you're a teacher and you're on video conference, the last thing you want to do is lecture the whole time. That might as well be a video. So I definitely don't want to be a hypocrite. So I'll say a few things about just where my head is, and for those who aren't familiar with Khan Academy, but I do want to free up as much time as possible for Q&A. As Ruth very generously introduced, Khan Academy, it's a not-for-profit with a mission of free world-class education for anyone, anywhere. And it all started a while ago now, 16 years ago, when I started tutoring family members. Word started to spread in my family. Free tutoring was going on. Before I knew it, it wasn't just one cousin. It was 10 cousins, 15 cousins. And I started, my day job, I was an analyst at a hedge fund, but I started writing software for them. I started, and then on a friend's suggestion, making videos. And it started to become clear that people who weren't my cousins were using it. And it grew and grew and grew. And by 2009, it had kind of overtaken my life. I set it up as a not-for-profit. That's when I quit my day job to work on it full time. And in 2010, that's when we got some of the first major funding from Google.org and from the Gates Foundation. And as Ruth introduced, it's, since then, actually, well, now I think we're over like 120 million registered users. Well, some very large number that I wouldn't have imagined many years ago. But our whole philosophy, there's kind of three pillars to it. One is, we want to make all of the core academic material from pre-K through elementary, middle, high school, and the core of college available in all the world's major languages across subjects and grades. And that's a big statement. We're not there yet, but we're pretty far along in several subjects. In math, we're pretty much there. Science, I would say by next year, we're going to be about 60 or 70% there. And then in the humanities and social sciences, we have started, but we have a little ways to go. The second pillar is, we want to do it in a way that personalizes to the needs of the student. And, the word personalization is a buzzword you hear a lot in education these days. Before, people used to say differentiation. But all that means is, instead of the student having to cater to the needs of where the pace is or what the curriculum is doing, that now that we can leverage technology, you can have the curriculum catering to the needs of where the student is. And that's not just a nice to have. One of the main issues you see, especially in subjects like math, is the reason why so many students have difficulty in math, especially when they get to, say, an algebra class, has nothing to do with the student's ability, has nothing to do with algebra. It has everything to do with, in a traditional academic model, you get 80% right when you're doing your multiplication tables in second or third grade. If that 20% never gets fixed, that Swiss cheese gap is there. And every time you see one of those 20%, what 8 times 7 is, you're going to have a little extra cognitive load. Then when you go into the 6th grade and you start learning dividing decimals or your negative numbers, if you only know that 70% well, you got a C on the exam, the class moves on and you have a gap. And then the math will build on top of those gaps. And so the more gaps you have, the math gets more and more difficult. We've all felt it. We've all sat at some point, whether it was in high school or university, in a class where we're like, I probably should not have just skated by with a B in that previous class. I should have really mastered it. And so the idea of personalization is, every teacher knows this too, that the students are all over the place in terms of their preparedness, but how do you cater to 30 different kids' needs? Well, that's where the technology can be helpful. Kids can practice, learn on their own pace on Khan Academy. Teachers can monitor that and then do focused interventions on when kids need help. And if a student has only 80% understanding of a subject, not a big deal. Let them keep working on it. And then the last pillar of Khan Academy is, how do we connect that learning to opportunities in the real world? And I have some, new projects that I hope can do that. But you fast forward to COVID, and it was one of those situations where, none of us could have foreseen it. But now in hindsight, it's pretty obvious that, Khan Academy was a very natural thing for folks to lean on. It's accessible, free. It covers multiple subjects and grades. It's very vetted. It has, direct to consumer functionality, but it also works with schools and districts. I believe the most studied online tool out there. So there's a lot of efficacy research behind it. And so we saw our usage grow by about 250%. And so or be about 250% of last year. So typically in the spring, we were seeing about 30 million learning minutes per day. That grew to about 85 million learning minutes. We saw, we normally saw about 20 million students a month. It went to 30 million students a month, and they were all spending 50% or 60% more time each. So we were just trying to keep up with that. And then as we got into the summer, we just tried to keep making more and more content and courses that could help people fill in these gaps that we're talking about, because it's pretty obvious that's going to be even worse because of COVID, even a larger divergence between students. And, also advocating for whatever we can. We aren't a telecom carrier, but obviously the work that we do is dependent on students having some form of internet access. So, that's where we're trying to, advocate as much as we can that it's a no-brainer in much of the world. It's not cheap to get internet access, but it's cheap relative to the benefit. And a lot of countries are doing massive stimulus, and it feels like that's achievable. And you fast forward to now, and we're just continuing to just try to do everything I just talked about, and provide districts and teachers and families perspectives of how distance learning can work well, what they should look for if their schools are not able to do what a good distance learning program looks like. How can families can take agency themselves and do enough for their students so that their students don't fall behind and ideally keep going. And we don't know how this whole COVID crisis is going to evolve, and it's suboptimal. Just to be clear, I'm associated with distance learning or online learning, but I'll be the first to say I would always pick an incredible teacher over incredible technology, and I would always pick in-person learning over distance learning. But the ideal is use the best of the technology in service to the teacher, in service of pedagogical goals. So it'll be interesting to see how all this evolves. I have some ideas there, but I'll turn it over to the Q&A.
Thank you so much. I think I appreciate that you actually want to have the Q&A, because I think that's why people are here. And the tool that you have created has provided access. We've talked over, this is our third forum, and we've been talking about accessibility as being the key issue, especially we have people here from Burkina Faso, Senegal, Kenya, Rwanda, Uganda, actually Brazil, Liberia, Cameroon. So it's a lot of different countries represented in this group. But the two main issues have been accessibility and quality of learning that's taking place. And so I'm going to open the floor. If you have a question for Mr. Khan, this is your chance. So we have a few minutes, and I've appreciated your graciousness and the fact that we ended up starting late with you. So thank you. But who would like to throw out the first question? And please say your name and the country you are from and your position. I need to unmute.
Jennifer, I'm happy to share a quick question.
Please.
Mr. Khan, thank you. I've used your videos for many years, and I've been very involved in video projects where teachers and students make videos together simply to learn how to teach and convey their subjects more effectively. One thing that interests me in this forum is whether it's possible to have some of the content that is in major languages like French or English in Africa, whether it's possible to take some of that and dub it in local dialects, either captioning or voiceover as a way to increase access to content that is language accessible.
Yeah, great question. So the simple answer is yes, absolutely. So we have what we call an advocate program. So Khan Academy is right now there's 46 translation projects, several of them in Africa and several of them in some of the languages I think you're referring to. And what it is it's not us, it's separate entities that kind of spawn up. Some of these are just kind of 1 or 2 person entities, volunteer entities, but some of them are larger. They have corporate sponsorship or government sponsorship, and they do exactly what you described. Some, whether it's closed captioning or subtitling, redubbing, in many cases redoing the content so that it just works well in whatever language. And so I encourage people to, if you do go look up, Khan Academy Advocate Program, if you Google that, I think you'll find it, or, Khan Academy Translation or Khan Academy Localization, you'll see the effort. And once we find an advocate in a region that we didn't, you might find that there's someone else already working on the language of the region, and then you can join forces with them. But if you find that there's a region or language where there is not something, then you could be the lead advocate. And there's actually a pretty lightweight process, and then you can kind of run Khan Academy essentially for that geography. So we're hoping folks do that.
If nobody has a question.
Thank you. That's great. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Christina Lux. I'm a Pepperdine student and also a principal at an elementary school. It was interesting, your shift in terminology from differentiation to personalization. I'm a big advocate of differentiated learning, but it's interesting now that you're moving towards personalization. Can you describe what that looks like and how differentiation is different from, in your view, personalization or personalized learning?
Yeah, and it's a good question, and as you know, the education world is constantly indexing on certain words or not on certain words,
Right.
and all of that. In my head, they could mean very much the same thing, but each of those words could also mean very different things. Like there's different, so either differentiation or personalization. It could be differentiation or personalization around pace. A lot of what I'm referring to actually is more around pace. A lot of what I talked about with mastery learning is that if you haven't learned something yet, it should be okay for you to slow down and keep working on that thing until you've mastered it, and then you work on to the next and move on to the next thing. And maybe your friend got through that first concept fast and needs a little bit more time on the second concept. That's cool, and I view that as a form of differentiation and a form of personalization. There's other forms that you might hear where we're all covering the same standard right now, but you differentiate by difficulty level, because maybe some of the more precocious kids need more challenge, while other kids don't need that challenge, but they need the basics. So there's that type of differentiation. There's sometimes, not so much differentiation, but there's sometimes people use personalization in terms of, the whole learning styles, which is for the most part been a debunked theory, but that some people might need this modality while other people might need that modality, or some people might need an example with, with soccer, and another person might need an example with baking. That in theory could be a form of personalization as well, but that's not what we're talking about. When I refer to personalization and differentiation and mastery learning, I'm all talking about being able to flex the pacing so that students have the time and the opportunity and the incentive to, never be okay with just like, oh, you have that big gap. I never really understood, fractions, but I'm gonna try to learn algebra now.
Thank you.
Now, can I go next? Yeah, morning, Mr. Kang. How are you today?
Good.
Good. Israel Ramirez from Las Vegas, Nevada. I teach 12th graders, high school level. I definitely want to thank you for being here today, and we use your videos, so to speaking, as well in my class. So I just want to say thank you for that. One of the questions that I have for you, it's about learning styles. Okay, and I can see that most of your videos, they have a black background. Could you please explain to me why is that? Or how can you tell me why it's a black background on most of the videos that we see?
Yeah, I wish I could tell you it was this very deep design process, but what happened back in the day when I was tutoring my cousins, before I even made the first video, first of all, I was kind of a traditionalist. I always liked blackboards versus whiteboards. And the reason why I did is I always felt you have just less photons bombarding your eyes, and you can kind of, I don't know, there's something aesthetically nice about it too. Maybe it's, kind of a traditional thing. And so when in the early days when I was tutoring my cousins, I had found this digital blackboard that I could use with them. And I would just write with kind of a light colored, digital ink on it, and they could see it. And this was very primitive stuff. This was back in 2004, 2005. But it looked nice. It looked like we were kind of had a shared blackboard. And then when one of my friends suggested that I make videos, we forget this was before phones had decent video cameras in it, et cetera. And I didn't even feel like having to comb my hair and look good. And I said, surely there's a way that I could just capture a screen of me writing while me talking, because that's what my cousins were getting. They weren't seeing my face. And so that's what I did. And so, and it's funny, the first one I uploaded onto YouTube, it was too long. YouTube had a 10-minute limit at the time, so it forced me to kind of chunk it down. So, one thing is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And so we've kept that aesthetic through the years. Now, I now have, I think, better reasons for doing. I still believe that having the black background and having kind of the different colored ink is actually easier to see. It's easier on the eyes. You're getting bombarded with less things. It has become something of an aesthetic for Khan Academy. now. You will see some white background examples every now and then. You know, I do that when I have to do a worked example and I have to take a screenshot from a PDF or from Khan Academy. Then I'll make the background white. But at least for my personality or aesthetics, it's a little bit more glaring on the eye, and it's when you use multiple colors, you don't see the contrast as much when you have a white background. So that's and the whole reason why you don't see my face. In the early days, it was convenience, but apparently there's a lot of learning. In fact, I've read the learning science that human faces are inherently distracting. So you're going to keep looking at the human face versus looking at the content. And there is something when you look at the content and hear a voice, I believe it does feel like we're sitting at the kitchen table together. When you're sitting next to a tutor one-on-one, you're not staring at them. You're looking at the work together.
Thank you so much. Okay. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you too.
Mr. Cullen, there was a question from Ogugwa Udeze, and she asked about Khan Academy's preschool program, if you could share a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we have something called Khan Academy Kids, and it's reading, writing, social emotional learning, and math for ages, I mean, you could arguably go 2, but definitely ages 3 to 7 right now, and we're probably going to go into 2nd or 3rd grade as well. And it's available in the US app stores. I'm not sure if it's available yet internationally in all of those app stores. But it really is a very holistic, you know, a lot of early learning apps are these very narrow things that can, you know, cover a few things, or it's kind of edutainment, while this really does cover all of the pre-K, kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade standards, at least in the US. And we've run efficacy studies. Actually, a researcher at Stanford ran it, where they took students who are operating in the bottom quartile or come from families that typically these kids, when they enter kindergarten, operate in the bottom quartile. And just by doing Khan Academy Kids for about 20 minutes a day for 6 weeks, it completely closed the gap between those kids and their middle-class peers in terms of their performance entering into kindergarten. So, you know, it's not just a nice to have. We think this could be a really valuable tool, because I think everyone here knows a lot of these gaps, a lot of these deficits occur before kids even step foot in a kindergarten program or in a 1st grade program. So, yeah, and I hope, you know, it's interesting. I've talked a lot about wanting to localize it into many other languages, and I hope we get to that eventually. But we've also heard that a lot of people actually want the English version, because obviously students at that age, if they just use Khan Academy Kids, they'll probably get reasonably familiar with English and reasonably functional in being able to read and write English as well, which we know, no matter what country you're in, has a lot of economic value for the rest of your life. But yeah, I encourage folks to check it out. I mean, it is much more than what you'd think of an app. There's over 100 full-length books in the app. There are countless, you know, practice videos that actually adapts to the students. So there's a lot in there, and it's all free.
Great. Do we have time? Do we have another question?
Just one question. This is my name is Mike from the Republic of Kenya. I'm a maths educator, and I really love your videos so much, because they've been of really help to me. My question is, while you are designing the Khan Academy, or your team, did you, or at some point, envision a scenario where you will have an influx that probably brought about by COVID? And if yes, how did you or your team prepare for this?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't fully envision the COVID influx, obviously, you know, before COVID hit. But once we saw, it was in February, we started seeing our traffic pick up from Asia. And we didn't, you know, we don't have a ton of usage in Asia, but in certain countries like South Korea, we have reasonable usage. We saw that go up dramatically. And that's when we got a letter from a teacher in South Korea saying that they were leaning on Khan Academy during their nationwide school closures. And I remember thinking, wow, that's incredible. A whole country has shut down its schools physically. And then the very next week, you know, here in the US, California in particular had some of the first community spread cases. And that's when it started to dawn on us that, wow, maybe California might shut down its schools in the next couple of weeks. And then, you know, every day that went by, maybe it's not just California, maybe it's the whole US, maybe it's not the whole US, maybe it's the whole world might shut down schools. And it started to become more and more clear that people were going to lean on us. So the way we prepared is, I mean, number one, talking to our engineering team and say, can we handle 2x, 3x the load? And so, give credit to our engineering team. I can't take a lot of credit for it. They really stress test what was going on. Obviously, what they were building already was built to scale. So, if they didn't do that well ahead of COVID, we would have been in a lot of trouble when COVID hit. So I think that was number one. And then the second thing is, we did do a massive pivot on all the folks who maybe were working on other priorities to say, well, are those priorities as important now as supporting people through distance learning, figuring out ways to do learning plans and daily schedules, and doing these get ready for grade level courses that have all the gap filling for students. So yeah, we've just tried to do a pivot, but it's been very imperfect and very messy, but also very interesting and exciting in its own way, because it's during this past year, I think a lot of folks have been frustrated, like, what can we do to help? And it's been good that we at least have this one outlet on the education issue that we've been able to help a bit.
Thanks. Thank you.
Do we have one more question?
So I see one question from Zach Mabasu. In my country, many students do not have access to devices, smartphones, and parents would prioritize buying food over buying internet bundles for students to access the internet. How do you envision such kids accessing and using Khan Academy in an environment without an internet connection? Any plans or ideas? So Zach, you're asking, I think one of the ultimate questions. My dream scenario is COVID acts as a catalyst for all countries to take the digital divide situation very seriously and figure out how all families can get access. And I know that might not be as economically realistic. Even in the US, 20-30% of families don't really have sufficient access. I think in countries like the US, it's a no-brainer. The US is doing $1 trillion here, $1 trillion there on economic stimulus. It would take 1% of that to completely solve the problem. I can imagine in many other countries, there might not be quite the resources, but the cost of devices and internet access is going down dramatically, almost on a monthly or on an annual basis. So that's my first hope. Barring that, I'm hoping that people can set up centers, corporations, or, you can imagine a little center that has, someone just monitoring some fairly low cost devices, making sure that, they're all up and running, and that the kids, even if the kids can go there for, I would say, an hour and a half a day, they can actually progress a lot. What I've been telling all families, especially in the spring when all of this happened and a lot of schools weren't doing distance learning, if you're able to do even half an hour a day of math, and Khan Academy has all the math, you're able to do where students are learning at their own time and pace, doing the practice, getting the feedback. A lot of folks associate us with the videos, but most of our resources are on the practice, the feedback, the mastery learning side of things. So if students of any age are able to do 20 to 40 minutes a day of that, they're able to do 20, 30 minutes of even just reading magazine articles, talking to parents, and then discussing it with other people, half an hour, 40 minutes of writing a day. Those students are going to actually, I think, do quite well. Even in a traditional 6 or 7 or 8 hour school day, if you actually look at the actual amount of focused learning that goes on, it's much lower than 6 or 7 or 8 hours. So that would be my hope. And so you can imagine, a device that costs $200 or $300 that has let's be conservative. It has a 3-year lifespan. So it's $100 a year. And if it's able to be shared in some type of a center by, 5 kids, that's for the device, that's $20 per student per year. And then similarly, the internet connection, if you're able to get an internet connection, that's $10 per month, and it's able to be shared by, well, that's probably could be shared by far more than 5 kids, then, you really are talking about something that could be in the tens of dollars per year per student. So I think it's possible, but the ideal is it gets solved at home as well.
Just one more questioning came in, and then I think we'll close it to honor your time. And maybe Ruth, you can close with some connections to even what you're doing in Cameroon, because I think this connects nicely. But there was a question that came in for, there's a group represented here called Teaching Training Together that's been working in Haiti for 10 years and is now just launched, actually this week is launching 10 new projects in the continent of Africa. And they said, do you have any suggestions? They've converted aspects of their program to virtual learning and training. Do you have any suggestions for creating new digital content or training videos?
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 points of advice. Take it with a grain of salt. One is, I tell this anyone who's making video type content is the whoever's making the content, make sure they're of course prepared and know what they're going to say, but like it should be coming very authentically from them, versus reading my belief versus reading a script or being heavily planned, because I think that's one of the differentiators of Khan Academy from the early days is that, I wasn't the first person to make math instructional videos, but when you look at most of them, you can tell it was designed by like a committee of folks who then had some kind of voice actor read it, and it looks professional and might have computer graphics, but you don't connect with it. It sounds like the next step of factoring a quadratic is when, and you don't really connect. And so as human beings, we're very sensitive to tone. We're very sensitive to authenticity. We're very sensitive to, is the person really thinking while they're talking, and do they really care? If they don't care, why should I care? And the best way to do that is to really authentically speak in your own voice, in your own tone, be your own personality. And I think whether it's student, academic teaching, or even teacher training, if they see that authenticity, it's real teachers who've gone through what they're going through, they're going to index on what they have to say more. Another, dimension to think about for teacher training, we've definitely seen this in the US a good bit as well, is actually leverage Khan Academy for teacher training so that teachers become really, really comfortable in the subject matter themselves. We know, especially at the elementary school level, a lot of teachers, there's some teachers who love and master all the math, but we know a lot of them, especially at the elementary school level, math wasn't the thing that they were, why they went into becoming a teacher. And so there's a lot to be said about, providing motivation, or to the teacher say, you go to Khan Academy, and provide incentives or recognition. If you say, look, for every grade you master, we'll give you something, or we'll recognize you in some way, or that's part of the training, because it is well researched that if even a 5th grade math teacher knows their algebra well or knows their calculus well, they're going to be a better 5th grade math teacher. They're going to communicate it better. They're going to be more confident. You're not going to hear them say math is hard, or even, they might not say it, but they might implicitly be, projecting it, that it's a difficult subject if they feel less confident. But if they feel confident, we feel in all of their Swiss cheese gaps, then I think they're going to be, much more effective as teachers as well.
All right, thank you so much. I think, like Jennifer said, it's important to respect your time, and thank you for going over and letting us have this Q&A session. We greatly, greatly appreciate it. You mentioned something as you were speaking, which really pulled at my heartstring, is the centers. I have this idea or this model that it's important to have these centers in maybe village areas or areas with a multiple number of schools. That way kids can use it as an after-school program. Kids can use it as a computer center where they actually just learn skills. And I started one in Cameroon recently. It's not doing what I want it to do yet, but I'm really excited and encouraged that you mentioned it, because it's motivating me now. Okay, how do I push to make sure that this idea really works? So I'm really excited, and thank you so much for mentioning that. Everybody, I just want us to give Mr. Ken a really big hand of applause. Like, thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you,
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Sorry for the Zoom confusion early on.
It's okay. You made it up big time for us with giving us extra time. So we truly appreciate you. And I hope everybody was encouraged. Tomorrow is another day. We know Mr. Ken, you probably might not be able to make it, but if you can, come visit us tomorrow too. And we would like to stay in touch. We would like for you to maybe stay in touch with us as a group as we navigate sub-Saharan Africa and find new ideas and solutions. Is it okay for us to add you to our email list and reach out to you if we hit challenges?
Yeah, sure. And I'm happy to forward, to people on our team who might be better at helping or even connecting with folks with other groups that are already working in various parts of the world to kind of help share notes.
Wonderful. Any resources we can get will be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much, Mr. Kent. And thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Jennifer, did you have anything to say?
No, we just, again, want to, we thank you for staying a few minutes later. Most of you have registered for tomorrow's session as well, where we have Estelle Hughes, who will be speaking, and she's with the Africa Learning International Collaboration. And we are going to have more time to unpack some of the things that you started to share about in your breakouts, because again, we believe the greatest learning comes from one another. So thank you for being here today and for giving of your time. We hope this was fruitful, and we will see you tomorrow.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Stay safe, stay healthy, everybody.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Bye. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, Daisy.